All right, so something different today. We're breaking down a new film that's coming out. It's called After the Game, a 20-year look at three former players. I'm Jordan Spurgeon with the director of the film, April Abeyta. And April, first off, can you give us the elevator pitch on this? You're up in an elevator with somebody, you're maybe going 10 floors. You got to quickly tell them what this film's about. What would you tell them?
Yeah, well, first I'd be like, can I just hold you now? Because I'd want to give them more than just the pitch. But yeah, so this film, it really is, it's a documentary 20 years in the making, with really to show the long-term impact of athletics, especially on young women. So we follow three young women from their time as student athletes, college athletes, until their lives into their professional careers today, which is 20 years later. So to see how it's impacted them. These are women who didn't go play professionally, quite often because that's just not an opportunity. Or an option for a lot of women, but to see still there's a lot of positive benefits that can be reaped out of athletics.
Where was the idea for this born? Like, how did this come about for you 20 years ago?
Yeah, well, first off, I was a student athlete. You know, I played a lot of sports in high school, and then I was fortunate enough to be able to go and play basketball in college. And I think, quite frankly, I got tired of, like, if I just wanted to go play pickup ball at the park, you know, just go like shoot some hoops. I got tired of just being the one that was just the girl, and like people didn't want their girl on the team, right? You gotta remember, I'm older now, so like it's improved a little bit today, which is good to see. But you know, especially back then, I just sort of got tired of, you know, not just for myself, but for all these other athletes that I knew and played with, and their talent, and just not getting the respect. And you know, I knew, you know, at that point, I knew it was very interesting becoming a filmmaker, and I appreciated the power that media and film have in sort of changing people's minds about things and exposing them. And so I wanted to just leverage the power of film to showcase women athletes in particular. And so I started with what was actually my college basketball team at that time, because that's where I had the access. I had a coaching staff who trusted me, which is a big part of it. Especially, again, you got to remember, back then it wasn't so ubiquitous to have, like as it is today, to have cameras in your faces. So there's a lot of like, no, don't, you know, I don't want to be on camera. What is that? You know, everybody thought every camera was like major professionalism at that point, you know. Nowadays we know better. So
with that, okay, so it's at Chapman where you played. The three women that you follow, including Michelle Rosie, who's actually from Arizona. She went to Chaparral High School. Why were they the three that you ended up following for this?
yeah, well, they all had really interesting stories that I could see right away, like that there was something, even at that time, even though the story evolved into something very different than what I think I first envisioned. But just even at that time, they each had an arc from a storytelling perspective that I thought was quite fascinating. You know, one, first off, with the coach is one of the characters, because I mean, the coach, everyone wants to know like the ins and outs of what they're thinking, why they do the things that they do. And maybe a part of me too as a player is like, why did you do that thing? Why does she come off the bench and she doesn't come up? You know, like you want to understand those decisions a little bit more. But with Michelle, you know, from Arizona, she was a really interesting use case, because she was someone who didn't get a lot of playing time for most of her college career. Yet she had a great success in high school. I think Chaparral won their state championship, I think her senior year. Yep. In high school. So she really knew, like she knew what it's like what it takes to be a winner and how to compete. Very talented, but just for whatever reason, dynamics of the team, like she'd never really sort of gotten that sort of, you know, the exposure she wanted in terms of playing time at the college. So she was really vying to make her last year, that the year that we started filming, which was her senior year, she was really vying to really make a difference in that regard. And how was she going to do that? And what was she going to change? So I knew that was going to be really interesting. And would she reach her goal, right? And if she didn't, what would she do? So that was, I thought, a really compelling arc for her. And then our other player character, Polly Neves, she was interesting because she's a junior transfer, you know, so transferring has become, again, much more common, I think, at the Division I level now than it was back then. But in the D3 level, it's been an aspect really more pulling from junior college pool and talent there. And so, you know, what does somebody do who has that college experience, but they come in and they have to join a brand new team, a brand new program? You know, how do they integrate themselves into the team and add value, and also live up to the expectation of having that experience versus like a freshman, right? A freshman, you sort of expect like, oh, they're probably not going to do a lot. They're a freshman, so you give them a little leeway there. But when they're a junior transfer, there's a lot more expectation coming. So I thought that'd be an interesting arc for her as well. So there were several other players that I also filmed quite a bit at that time. But then when we started to think about the future state, like and how their lives evolved, one, access to them still, and their willingness to participate, in the project after all this time was also another factor as well.
So without really any spoilers for it, what were some of the challenges of staying in touch and catching up with them for 20 years and just kind of being able to follow them around? You mentioned the access. So what else was a challenge for you?
Yeah, you know what, I would say a benefit of, and I think that I tie this into benefits in part to sports, like the ability to stay in contact was not a challenge at all. Actually, I think, when maybe it's not every single teammate, but I think one of the joys of being able to, lucky enough to participate at the college level, is really developing these relationships that really can last a lifetime. And even if you don't talk to each other, you're probably not going to talk to each other like all the time, especially as people move away from the area and develop families in their own lives. But you can, I can connect with some, like a lot of these women, and it's not really like we might not talk for a year, but it's sort of, you just go back to old habits. They're just old friends, so it's not, that part is not really so much of a challenge. It's I guess if there's some that maybe move really far away or don't get on social media too, that becomes a little more difficult. So you to stay contact sometimes with folks. But the greater challenge, I think, was really more on both the storytelling aspect and then the technical challenges, right? Of the evolution of technology from a filmmaking perspective has evolved quite a bit, I think, in a lot of terrific ways. But when you have, I don't know, 50, 60 hours of footage on high-8 and DV tape and all that old analog media, how do you merge that with the digital files and the much greater quality media nowadays? That became its own separate unique challenges. But again, the other piece would be the storytelling piece, just finding that right thread that pulls it all together, right, and keeps you connected.
So you're the director, April. Who else, like how many people were on your team putting this together then throughout the years?
There's, I don't know off the top of my head. I mean, camera operators alone over the years, like there's been a ton, especially for the 1999, 2000 footage, grabbing, especially because I was a player as well. So I would film what I could, but I would grab friends. Luckily I was in film school, so I had a lot of eager and really helpful and talented peers who would kind of come in and help and film games or film practices and things like that. So just, pulling resources wherever you can. And then, on today, filmmaking is definitely a team sport. I think it's not to say it's impossible to do alone, but it sure is really difficult to do. There's a lot of, aspects from, whether it's the more technical aspects of filmmaking to distribution, to marketing, to all those things. There's a lot of folks that we've, been able to connect with and, I think build something pretty cool that I'm pretty excited about. Like I'm not a musician, so work with my my friends who can like compose music and do those things and really add something and elevate it, sonically. So that type of stuff.
What do you hope that someone, especially let's say a young woman who's maybe trying to play sports or debating whether or not to play sports at high school or college or whatever level, what would you hope they take away if they were to watch this film?
Yeah, I had an opportunity to talk with a number of current student athletes as we did. We hosted several private virtual screenings with some current basketball teams around the country, which is really exciting. And so, and the common message that I would share with them, first, if they want to hear it, is that even if things that are not necessarily going your way with your sport, whether maybe you're not winning, maybe you're not getting that playing time, try to think about all the other things that can come with it. So especially if they're thinking about this is too tough, it's too hard, I don't want to keep playing, that sometimes there's more to it that you just don't see on the horizon yet, but it's going to be something really positive and beneficial. There's no guarantee, of course, that that's going to happen or that you're going to get all the rewards that you're seeking. But if you quit it's definitely not happening. You're definitely not getting it right. And so I think one, sticking with it, because there are things that you may not be aware of what, let me reframe that. Stick with it because the outcomes you're seeking may be different than what you actually get, and what you get might be actually what you need. And so just bearing that in mind, because sometimes we think life is just a super linear thing of I will do this and then I get that and then I get that. But sometimes it just takes you on this journey you're not expecting, and it becomes way more powerful and productive for you.
All right. So after the game, a 20-year look at 3 former athletes drops on November 2nd. Where can people go when they want to check out the film?
Yeah, we're excited. It's available on iTunes. It'll be available on Amazon on demand, as well as Comcast on demand. So.
Great. Thank you so much, April. That's April Abeyta, the director of this film. It drops November 2nd, as I said before. Be sure to check it out. And yeah, have a good day, everybody.
Thanks for having me.